Welcome to the In Love with PMDD podcast. I am your host, Dr. Rose, your PMDD Relationship psychotraumatologist, and I help you stop the monthly PMDD breakups. PMDD is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. It is in approximately 1 in 5 women, and it makes you want to break up with your partner approximately 1 to 2 weeks before your period every single month. So as someone who has suffered with PMDD for over 18 years, I dedicated my doctorate practice to helping partners navigate those monthly PMDD breakups with everything from attachment styles, triggers, sensitivity to noise, sensitivity to touch, all of the things that you really struggle with when you're in PMDD. And I also dedicated my dissertation to a phenomenological study of the relationship experiences of partners of individuals who suffer with premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So I'm not just here to help the sufferer, the one who is suffering with PMDD. I am here for the partners as well. So if you need those private sessions, make sure you go to inlovewithpmdd.com and get those tools. So let's get into this week's PMDD trauma transformational tools that is going to help you stop the monthly breakups and stop the suffering and stress in your PMDD relationship. Let's get into it. Welcome to the second episode in the communication series of the In Love with PMDD podcast. Today, we're going to be talking all about when you are offended because your partner has said something or done something that has triggered you. I know we've all been there when we've been going through a normal day and then our partner says something and then all of a sudden we're offended because we feel like they think we're not capable of doing something. They're kind of demeaning us. They're not validating our feelings. Maybe this is a situation where you kind of try to tell them about something that's bothering you and they've always minimized it and said, oh, it's just because you're in PMDD, or even asking you the question of, are you in PMDD? That is the most triggering thing for me, is when I'm making a really good point and I'm really trying to explain something to my partner and then they automatically ask me, hey, are you in PMDD? It's kind of like maybe they're not even considering that anything that I'm saying is actually valid. They're trying to take it through the lens of whether I'm in PMDD or not. And it makes me feel like they think that I'm less than, and they think that I tell my friend, like I call it da-da-da-da. And it's kind of like, oh, you think you're like basically thinking I'm stupid because I've lost brain cells because I'm in PMDD. Like what I'm saying is not valid. And it's very offensive to think that your partner, someone that you love, someone that you're with, someone that's supposed to know you best, can possibly think of you in that way where you're just not capable of making, normal conversation. And then when you add in brain fog and you add in forgetting things, it kind of adds on to their case. And so they may just be asking the question of, are you in PMDD? So they know how to react. But for us, we get really, really offended by it because it's kind of like, you should be listening to what I'm saying, whether I'm in PMDD or not, and don't try to put me in that category. I know it's so hard for us to think that when we get into PMDD, there's certain things we say and how we communicate doesn't make sense. But we've also been in the moments where we thought we were making sense and then we can't remember our next sentence, and then it frustrates us even more. So we're very aware that when you're in PMDD, certain things don't make sense or certain sentences are harder for you or thought processes, but it's kind of like you don't want to be called out on it by your partner because then you feel like they're going to put everything in that category of, oh, it's all PMDD. So then even if you have like a valid reason to be upset, they're just going to categorize it as, oh, you're just in PMDD, so it's probably not really a thing, when a lot of times it is a thing. So you get really, really frustrated, you get really offended, and you get to the point where you think to yourself, because I've been there before, it's like a fork in the road. I can either take one or two lanes. On the right, it is that I completely ignore the fact that I've been triggered, right? I just pretend like I'm normal and just say, oh, like act like it didn't bother me. Or you go to the left and you begin to react to those triggers. And you kind of want to get to a point where you're like, oh, I want to make the right decision. Like, I want to make my point. I want to be heard, but I also don't want to deal with the backlash and the aftermath of having this like long drawn out, argument, disagreement. And then you end up in a place where you're just not seeing eye to eye. And then you go from days and days and days for like not seeing eye to eye for days and days and days is exhausting, because for me, earlier in my journey with my partner, it used to take me, he timed it. It used to take me an actual week to get over things. So what happened is it would make my partner really, really scared to bring up anything that was genuinely bothering him, because he felt like, do I have a week? Like, if we had a big event that was going on during the course of the next week, he would try his hardest to avoid anything, like saying anything that could potentially trigger me, because he'd be like, we don't have a whole week to just kind of shut down and not speak to each other and not be on the same page. Maybe we were going to be in front of family and friends, and he didn't want it to be awkward. So it would constantly be this time frame that was going on. And it's like, can I really say what I want to say? And I want to let you know that whether you're in PMDD or you're not in PMDD, when you get to a point where you're filtering the things that you're saying, meaning choosing whether you're going to express how you're really feeling or not, it's all going to come out, right? We've all been there where we've been trying to hold something in, and we've almost like been proud of ourselves, like, oh, I'm glad I didn't say anything during that time. But then when PMDD comes, it's like the filter comes off. We say whatever is on our mind. We don't have that moment to pause. And then it ends up being way worse because it's compounded. It's like not just one thing that you've been holding in. Like, say if you have 2 weeks of good weeks, like right now I have about 12 days of good days. And if every single time my partner triggered me within those 12 quote unquote good days, if I didn't say anything about it, if I chose to hold it in, then when PMDD comes, it's all like in a bottle. Right. So I'm just storing it. It's almost like you're giving more fuel to your PMDD rage by holding on to all of these things that are genuinely offending you. Because when PMDD rage comes and you're deep in it, like it's all going to come out, and it's not going to make sense that your partner triggers you one time when you're in PMDD, and then he gets 2 weeks worth of things that you kept in this jar of like offenses that you've had. And so the way that I tell all my clients to avoid this, because I've been there so many times where I've felt like that was the right thing to do, right? Have you ever been like early on in your PMDD journey with your relationship and just trying to work it out, and you're like, I think it's best if I just don't say anything when I'm triggered. I'm just going to be quiet. And I went through that phase where I'm just like, I'm just going to be quiet, right? It was almost like I was drugged. Like I was on I haven't taken, like medicines for PMDD. Like I know a lot of people have taken Zoloft and like a lot of other medicines, to deal with their moods. And I've never taken them, for various reasons, because I have a very active, like I have to be high functioning. I have to do a lot of things. And I've heard so many people get really like almost like you're stoned, like you're just dazed and you're really tired. And I really feared that, because me and my partner are long distance. So it's just me and my daughter, and I have a very active job where I have to physically do things. And then I have a dog. So I have all these things, and I'm like, I don't have a moment actually where I can just kind of do nothing. I don't have anyone that's going to come here and like take over for me if I just like went dormant and like fell down and wanted to like stare into the abyss for days and days and days, which that sounds amazing, but I just don't have that. So I've never taken medicine for it. But what that reminds me of as far as the moods and trying to hold things in is just being in a place where you're non-reactive, right? Where you're able to just take any comment from your partner, where they're able to say things and do things that you're actually offended by, but you just don't react to it. So in my mind, it's kind of like being on some kind of drug that allows you to just take it, and you just you're constantly downloading, okay, they said this and this triggered me. Okay, they said that and this triggered me, but you're not doing anything about it. And you're thinking like, wow, this is a really good thing. Like I'm doing a really good job because we're not arguing. But the thing about it is that that's not the end of it, right? Like you're downloading, you're internalizing certain things. It's still within you. It's not going anywhere. So it may be a win in the moment, but after that, when PMDD comes and that filter is gone and that ability to hold everything in is gone, then all of a sudden you're saying things and you're like exploding because you're like, and another thing, and you did this and you did this and you did this, and your partner is shocked and they're taken aback because they're like, man, I just did this one thing, but I'm getting this reaction as if I did this really, really horrible things. And a lot of times when I've talked to PMDD partners, they're very confused because the time in which everything comes out doesn't line up with the action itself, right? They may have said a comment, not thinking about it, and they just say something that triggers you. Well, because of that, they get this big reaction because of all of these other things, and they're trying to like only address that one thing. And then all of a sudden you're demanding that they not only address the current thing that they did, but all the previous things that they did. And that's just that it's too much for them to handle a lot of times in the moment. And then they begin to act out of character. And I've had so many clients come to me and they're constantly starting the sessions and starting to talk to me about things that their partner has done that, they're acting out of character, which we've all been there. And so I think, let me pause right there and let's just sit with that for a moment, right? We all have PMDD who are listening to this, or you dealt with someone who is going through PMDD. We've all had moments where we act out of character. And I think that sometimes when we feel like we're on our best behavior, meaning we're not reacting to certain triggers, that we feel the need to judge our partners for reacting to things when they're acting out of character. And I always tell my clients, never judge your partner for how they're acting when they're reacting to a trigger, when they're reacting to PMDD rage, because it's not fair, right? You don't want to be judged for your ugliest, darkest moments where we all know we've had them. We all know we've had those moments that we're not proud of. And we don't need to judge each other for them. We need to create a safe place. And this, for me, with my clients, I always tell them, there's nothing that you can tell me where I'm going to sit there and be like, oh my gosh, you're such a horrible person. Like, I can't believe you did that. I'm not going to judge you on it because I've been in places where I've reacted to PMDD rage and I've done things that I'm not proud of. And I've done things that I wish I would have never done. And I don't think that you should put your partner in that position to throw things in their place that they've done when they've been acting out of character. Like there has to be this safe zone where it's like, if I was offended, if I was triggered and I acted out of character, that should not be thrown in my face at a later time because I'm still here. I'm trying to grow from it. I'm trying to learn from it. But if you continuously have this individual that's trying to throw it in your face and be like, remember that time in 1995 where you did this? It's like, the person does not have the ability to go back in time and erase that moment. No one has an eraser that they're just have in their back pocket where they can just go back and erase those very shameful moments where they've said and done things that are out of character. And if you are in this intimate relationship with your partner, you're supposed to love them. And part of loving your partner is covering your partner. Part of loving your partner is covering your partner. What does that look like? What does that even mean? When I mean you cover your partner, that means, okay, ladies, you've been in situations, I'm sure, when you were younger, in your 20s, whatever, you're hanging out with your girlfriends, you guys went out to party, you guys are having a good time, and you go to the bathroom, maybe you're out, and they say, oh, I got to go to the bathroom. They go to the bathroom and they start throwing up in the bathroom, right? Because they drink too much, party too hard or whatever. When you think of that girl that's holding the other friend's hair back, while they throw up, rubbing their back, telling them that they're okay, making sure that they get in that Uber, that Lyft, and they get home safely, and then talking to them the next day as if they're the same person that you care about, you love, like that's your friend. Right? That's what I mean by covering them. You're not making them feel bad about the fact that they went out and threw up all over their dress, threw up in their hair and all these things, and maybe embarrassed themselves a little bit. Like, you're giving them grace to say, oh, okay, we had a good time. Like, you overdid it a little bit. You're not making them explain themselves for how they acted in the moment. But so many times when we get in relationships with our PMDD partners, we're expecting them to explain themselves. Like, remember when you said that thing to me that was below the belt? Like, remember when you did that thing? And you're shaming them for something that you're supposed to be their safe place. You're supposed to be that person that they can do those things with, and you cover them. You protect them. You don't make them feel bad about the things that they're doing, or if they're acting a little bit out of character in the moment. We all get upset. We all get offended. We all get irritated. Give them permission to do that. Stop being so hard on your partner where you're expecting this level of perfection that's unattainable, and then punishing them because they're not meeting that standard. Because someone can only receive that much punishment for a small amount of time before they say, you know what, you're right, I am a piece of crap. Like, I'm just going to leave. Like, you just go find someone that's better than me then, right? Have you ever heard your partner say that when you're going in on them, which is what my partner calls it, like going in, like you're constantly telling them, you didn't do this, and you didn't do that, and you didn't do this right, and you didn't do this right. And then you know what they say to you? Fine. You know what? I didn't. So maybe you should just go find somebody who can do it right. And they feel that they're not worthy, and they feel like a piece of crap, and you somehow feel validated in making them feel that way. And you know why? Because they hurt you when they were doing those things that they said and did that were below the belt, and you felt justified in hurting their feelings back by saying, yeah, you did that. Like, you don't have any remorse for hurting their feelings, for continuously bringing up something that they've apologized for, that they feel shame about, and you continuously throw it in their face. And all that's doing is building a wall in between you and your PMDD partner. So what I tell my private clients, and what I'm asking you, is to really think about, do you want to be with this person? Do you really want to be with this PMDD partner? Because if you do, then you cover them and you don't continuously bring it up, and you forgive and forget. And what I mean by forgive and forget, I don't care if you remember the shameful thing that they did every single day that you're in that relationship with that person. You don't bring it up. You do not speak on things that they've already apologized for, because there's nothing that they can do to go back in history to erase what they did. So what are you doing? What are you doing as a PMDD partner if you're bringing up things to them and telling them what they didn't do, or then the mistake that they made? What is that serving? How can they change that? And it's almost like no matter what they do currently, you're not giving them the permission to move forward. We have all done things that we're not proud of when we're in PMDD, and for our partners when they've been triggered by us being in PMDD. We've all done things, but we all cannot go back in history and change that. And so we begin to think to ourselves, what is the right thing to do? Should I just ignore these triggers? Should I just ignore it? No, I'm not saying to ignore it. I'm saying to acknowledge it. But when you're triggered by your PMDD partner, don't pretend like you're not. Because honestly, if you're in a real intimate relationship and your partner is really connected to you, they're going to know. They're going to know. And when I say communicate it to them, I don't mean in a shameful way. Don't say, oh, well, because you did this, that's why I'm feeling this way. That's not what I mean. What I mean is communicating to your partner, this is what it sounds like. If your partner says something or does something and it triggers something that they've done in the past, or it triggers something that you're like feeling some type of way about it, just say, you know what, this is really triggering me right now. I'm I'm going to try to find a way to get back in a better place. But right now I'm really triggered. And I just want you to know that so that you understand what's going on with me in the moment and why my actions are, maybe I shut down a little bit and I'm not talking as much, but it's just because I got a little bit offended by this, and give them the opportunity to respond to that. Like, recognize where you are in the moment. I love this book. It's one of my favorite books by Eckhart Tolle, and it's called The Power of Now. And it's all about all you have is now. And when you're honest with where you are in the moment of being offended and being triggered by your partner, it slows everything down, because when we get into that moment of trying to avoid being offended, we look like we're flailing, like those inflatable arms, like that are just going all over the place, because you're constantly trying to do stuff to keep you busy, to run away from the fact that you're triggered. You're either trying to avoid your partner, like, oh, I'm fine, I'm totally fine, right? I'm totally fine. We've all been in those moments where our partner is like, I'm fine, I'm totally fine. And it's like, no, you're not. But more importantly, no, you're not, right? Like, we know that they're avoiding reality, or you're just trying to keep yourself busy. I'm fine. I got this to do. I got this to do. And you're filling up your plate with things instead of just being honest and sitting with the emotions that you're dealing with and saying, I'm not good right now. Emotions only last for 90 seconds, but they only last for 90 seconds that you're present and feeling them. Psychology fact. Emotions only have the ability to last for 90 seconds. It is what you do after those 90 seconds that's going to determine the impact of those emotions on your life with you and your PMDD partner. If you're really honest with those emotions in those 90 seconds, it does the least amount of damage because you own it. Emotions are not meant to be there to do damage. They are a warning sign. But sometimes it may be just a false alarm. If you have negative emotions about your PMDD partner, that doesn't mean that you automatically call them a piece of crap and start calling all your girlfriends and your family members and telling them, oh my goodness, my partner's a piece of crap because they did this, this, and this. When you have a negative emotion, when you've been offended by your partner, that should be a signal to ask yourself, what is happening? What is happening in this moment? Why am I angry about this? Why does this offend me? Because you're the one that's affected. You're the one that's affected. So ask yourself, why was I offended by the comment that they made? And it's not saying, you're the problem. And it's not always a matter of who's right and who's wrong. The fact is you got triggered and you got offended. It's not about blaming it on your partner. It's not about blaming it on you. Sometimes emotions, when you're offended, are false alarms. Put your attention on the situation, but that doesn't mean that you have to act on it, right? Just because you feel something doesn't mean you have to act immediately on that feeling. I'm going to say that again. When you are in PMDD, just because you feel something doesn't mean that you have to act on that feeling. Feeling something is not a prerequisite for action. Think about why you're feeling that. And in the process of analyzing and assessing that emotion that you're feeling, that trigger that you're feeling, that 90 seconds will go away, that emotion will go away. Think about it. What if your partner has triggered you and said something and it's driven by fear? If you are out with your partner and you see them looking at another person and you automatically get offended because you feel like they're looking at other girls, instead of thinking about why does that bother me? Do I think that my partner is going to cheat on me? Do I have this underlying insecurity? Have they cheated on me? Is this something I haven't healed? Recognize that reaction has everything to do with you and not necessarily something to do with your partner. Because if your partner was just looking in that direction, that doesn't mean that they're checking them out, but it means that they triggered an insecurity that you have within yourself that you need to deal with. and think about what are the consequences of you acting on this emotion. You've gone off in PMDD rage before. Everyone with PMDD has. Think about what the outcome of that has been. Think about not necessarily the damage that's done to your PMDD partner, which I'm pretty sure is horrible, and I'm pretty sure it's damaging to your relationship. But for you, think about the guilt that you felt when you woke up the next day and thought about all of the awful things that you've said and done in those moments. You have to live with that. You have to live with the consequences of you reacting to being offended, having that negative emotion, and choosing to not take a moment to pause before you react. Science is very clear on the fact that our ability to think and make good decisions decreases with strong negative emotions. It's easy to make a bad decision because you're experiencing negative emotions. It's easy to tell your partner to F off. It's easy to tell your partner that you want to break up with them. It's easy to tell your partner that you don't really want to be with them and say hurtful, degrading things to them when you're experiencing offense and a negative emotion, right? It's easy to just pop up and do that. And it may make you feel good in the moment, but you're going to pay for it later. And you're going to pay for it later because the ego that you have in the moment that's making you feel like, yeah, go ahead, tell them that. Like they deserve that. Yeah, say that. All of that is going to eventually go away. That's because that's not the core of who you are. You're not an evil person. You're not a bad person. But when you get on the side of reacting to those negative emotions, you get on that side and then that thing leaves you. PMDD rage doesn't last the whole time. I don't know if you've noticed that. Like you feel the PMDD rage in the moment and you explode and then it goes away. And then you're left with the guilt and the shame. And then you're like, I hope my partner doesn't tell anybody that I did that. I hope my partner doesn't tell anybody that I said that. I hope he doesn't bring up that I said that. Like maybe they'll just, let's just pretend like that didn't happen. Let me just go apologize and pretend like that didn't happen. Now you're at their mercy, where you were all big and bad the day before, saying all these things to them, saying what they're not doing right, saying what they need to do, saying what they need to do better. And then when the ego leaves and you're left with that PMDD guilt, you want them to forgive you. You want them to soften their heart, forget about their feelings, and just say, oh, I understand that you're like, I understand that hurt you, but I said, I'm sorry. Now you're apologizing for your reaction, but what about all of the things that you were calling them out on that they've done in the past? Did you ever forgive them? Forgiveness is a two-way street. If you want your partner to forgive you for going off on them because you're in PMDD rage, you need to forgive them for the reason that you went off of them in PMDD rage. Because if you went off on them over something that they did in the past, that's the root cause of everything that's going on. The root cause is you haven't gotten over a situation. And that's why with all of my private PMDD coaching clients, we have to heal the past before we can move forward and create that place to move on. Because if not, you're going to continuously keep bringing something up. And at some point, you really need to ask yourself, am I willing to forgive this person and be with them? Either you are, and you're willing to move forward, or you're going to continuously cause them to suffer because you're offended over something that they did. And if you're offended, the next thing I want you to think about doing is, if you're feeling stressed out, if you're feeling offended, that means you're stressed out, basically. You need to do something to de-stress yourself. Do not put it on your PMDD partner to make you feel better because they triggered you. Once you've been triggered, the responsibility to get untriggered, to come down from that, to calm down is on you. So whatever that looks like for you. Today, I got triggered and I had to go do a workout. I don't particularly like, cardio running like that, but I went on my treadmill. It literally took me 40 minutes, 37 minutes, whatever. And then I felt better afterwards. But I noticed I was on edge. I was talking to my partner. I was being short with them, right? These are the things that you need to notice. When you notice that you know how you act when you're offended, right? You know how you act. If you see those things coming out, go do something about it. Don't put it on your partner and just punish them, shut down, or make little snide comments to them because you're in that moment. Like, take the time to respond to them after you've de-stressed and done that thing. It could be getting a massage, going for a walk, binge watching Netflix. I've done all of the things. You just have to check in with yourself and see what you need in the moment. And recognize that you being offended by something can be beneficial if you use it properly. It can force you to make positive changes in your life by facing something that you've probably been avoiding. Like if your partner was looking at somebody else and it triggered you and you got offended, it's probably because you need to deal with the insecurity that you're feeling that your partner's going to cheat on you, that you're feeling like you're not good enough, that you're feeling like you're too damaged, that you feel like they would be better off with somebody else. Like these are things that you need to deal with. And it's actually a good thing that it came up, because that means it is a sign that you still haven't dealt with something. And the sooner we deal with things, the sooner they'll go away in a healthy way versus just burying them. Right? So the next time that your partner triggers you and you're feeling offended and you're wanting to just go off on them and you're wanting to bring up things from the past and you're wanting to just be in that moment where you're just like, oh, I can't believe that you did this. I want you to stay calm and assess the situation so that you can choose how you're going to react to this. And recognize that it is very normal. It is very normal to be offended by your partner, and it may not always be intentional. So don't always blame your partner for you being offended. You being offended is you being offended. That doesn't mean that they mean to do it. And so a lot of times you need to take responsibility for that. You need to make sure that they're understanding that what you're feeling in that moment is valid, but you need to figure out if they're even doing it on purpose before you decide to go off on them and to punish them for the way that they made you feel in the moment, for the way that they made you feel triggered. You need to see if they're even doing it on purpose. Because if they're not doing it on purpose, then why are you punishing them? If it was an accident, give your partner an opportunity to make mistakes and to do things that may trigger you, but it may be a mistake. They may not be trying to. And the same thing with you. You may trigger them. And a lot of times they don't know if you're in PMDD or not. And so they may be holding in a lot of the things that you're doing to them that's triggering them. And they have been forcing themselves to not bring it up and walking on eggshells, which is what my partner says he's done so many times. Is I feel like I was walking on eggshells because I didn't feel like I could bring up something that was triggering me because I knew you were in PMDD and I didn't know how your reaction was going to be. This is what your partners have to go through, right? It's not all about you when you have PMDD. PMDD is horrible. But you have to understand what your partner is going through. So before you get to those points and you're immediately reacting to them because you're triggered, I want you to really think about, are they even doing this on purpose? Do they even deserve this reaction? Why is this triggering me? What can this teach me? How can this make me better? How can this make our relationship better? What's something that we've been avoiding that we really, really need to deal with? So take the times that you're being offended by your partner as a sign of something that you really, really need to deal with, and not that it's a negative thing. So when you begin to shift your mind and say, oh, I'm triggered and I'm offended over this, like think of it like a positive thing. Like, wow, I'm really glad that this is going on because that means that this is probably something that I need to deal with. And it's probably something that I wouldn't have dealt with had I not been offended and triggered by my partner. Right? It's rewiring your brain to be grateful that your partner is triggering you instead of punishing them for it. Because when you're in an intimate relationship and you're punishing your partner, you ultimately suffer too. Like, you're not just punishing your partner and then you're going to feel great. Because if you're living together, if you're in a relationship together, like, when they're down, you're down. So don't think of it as like you're up here and they're down here because they've done something bad. It's kind of like, if they've done something bad and they genuinely apologize, create that safe place of being like, I know that you're sorry. Start believing the best about your PMDD partner again. Stop thinking of them as this negative, evil, malicious person that is doing all of these things on purpose, and give them the opportunity to make mistakes and know that they genuinely care about you and love you, but they're human and they're going to make mistakes and they may not always meet the guidelines that you're used to. Give them a little bit of forgiveness and permission to make mistakes so that when you are offended, let them apologize and then move forward. And then that way you're not continuously doing damage to your PMDD relationship. You got this. I hope this PMDD episode helped you and your partner in your struggles within your relationship. And if this is something that you know that you need help with and you need further support, individualized support, make sure you're going to inlovewithpmdd.com and you're getting those private sessions to really work through what you're going through in your relationship, specifically in regards to PMDD. And also, I want you to leave a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. What this does is it helps other PMDD sufferers and partners find this show that can help them get these free PMDD relationship tools. I remember what it felt like to not know that there were tools out there specifically for PMDD relationships. So I want to make sure that you are sharing these tools with others, share them on your social media, share them with people that you know that are also struggling in their PMDD relationships. Until next episode, this is Dr. Rose, your PMDD relationship psychotraumatologist. One more thing, I almost forgot. I now have the Fresh Start PMDD Partners Workbook. What this workbook can do is, if you've had past traumatic experiences with your partner, past fights, past arguments, and they keep coming up every single month in PMDD, I created a Fresh Start Workbook so that you can deal with all of the traumatic experiences that have happened in the past in PMDD rage and all of these things, so you can stop going through the same cycle again and again and again. So get that workbook. It comes with a video episode of the actual podcast that I recorded on getting a fresh start in your PMDD relationship, so you're not continuing the same cycle again and again and again. So make sure that you get that workbook. And if you need those individualized counseling sessions, you know where to go, inlovewithpmdd.com. Until next time, we got this. Love you.